Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Live here in Gwinnett County, the city of Peachtree Corners. I'm with Brian Johnson. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Hey Rico, good. How are you?
Good, good. Beautiful day. It's been hot weather, although thank God we don't have a hurricane really coming our way, so I think we're fine that way.
You're
Um,
here.
Before we start on our show that we try to do every month about the city with our city manager, Brian, I just want to say thank you to EV Remodeling Inc. for being, and Eli for being a sponsor of these podcasts and a good community resident and business here in Peachtree Corners as well. They do design and build, renovation work on homes. Check them out at evremodelinginc.com. We appreciate them supporting our journalism and our podcasts. So let's get right to it. There's we've been gone from doing this for a few weeks, but I think the first thing that we should start off with is something that's been out there and on next door a bit, and I don't know if it's quite as bad, although I've seen the pictures and it seems as bad. But Jonesbridge Park seems to be getting trashed on a regular basis, and July 4th wasn't a good weekend for that with lots of stuff just being trashed all over the place there. But so, some people have complained about that. Some people have complained about the amount of police presence that has been called. I think one person said there were over 300 calls for police to visit in 1 year in 2023. I don't know if that's true. Sounds like a lot to me. Um, but I thought we'd talk to you, Brian, about it because, obviously, even though it's a county park, the city's aware of what's going on there. And so I'm curious, what is going on there? Well, beyond what I see, and, does the city have anything they can do about it?
So there is some challenges with Jonesbridge Park.
Yeah.
Up front, I will say also important to establish a couple things here. One, Jonesbridge Park is a county owned and
Right.
maintained park. And so, there are some conversations we've had with them about things. And, after the conversation's been had, we don't control, if it was our park, I could end up going to my Parks and Rec director and be like,
Right.
fix it. So it is, county owned, maintained by Gwinnett County Parks and Rec. Our police department is Gwinnett County
Hmm.
PD. And so their presence or lack thereof, as some people have expressed frustration about, is them now. That's not to just you know relinquish all involvement, but um, there is a third party involved in helping resolve some of these challenges. Now the challenges exacerbate a challenge of any public space. In this case, is exacerbated because Jonesbridge Park
Hmm.
is one of the few parks, at least in this area, that has access, like improved access down into the Chattahoochee River.
Yes. Right.
So it is a very developed park because it has everything from a lot of covered pavilion space, picnic
Hmm.
tables, grills. It's a gorgeous location. It's the only
Hmm.
place on the Chattahoochee River anywhere near here that has some, you want to call them rapids.
Right. Yeah.
And then it has improved stone steps to where you can walk into the Chattahoochee and not have to go down some little goat path or whatever.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, they've done a great job there.
It is. Then it has a big playground, and then
Yep.
it also has a section of it has athletic fields where there's league
Yep.
soccer.
Right in the
That's
back. Right.
so when you combine all of that, you have a lot of people who don't have access to a park that want to go, or excuse me, they don't have access to nice facilities like covered pavilions and outdoor grills or whatever, and they go to
Hmm.
the park because it's a gorgeous location. There's things for the kids to do. You can get together, you can grill. So
Yeah.
it attracts. It's one of those things where you create your own problem. And, in this case, it has. And then to compound things, there are some neighborhoods that back up right to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've even had tournaments in which Waze or just even Google Maps, somebody will drive into the park and there's no parking for like league soccer tournaments.
Hmm.
And they'll actually drive into the back of Linfield subdivision that backs up to it and walk through the side yards.
Oh,
They'll park in
really?
the street in Linfield and then walk between two houses that back up to the parks to get
Oh,
to the.
wow. No wonder some of those residents were upset. I didn't
Yes.
realize that. And I
So
know the parking can be challenging there. Yeah.
yes. So that's all, so now that's what all of us, Gwinnett County, as well as the city, are trying to regulate.
Mm.
A Fourth of July weekend is, probably one of the best examples where you just get a crush of people because everybody wants to be outside grilling and having a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I cannot speak to Gwinnett County Parks and Rec in that whether they planned for their parks to have, you know, a a need for enhanced cleanup
Hmm.
event. I'd like to think that they realize the Fourth of July weekend is going to require extra, you know,
You would
parks and
think.
rec staff
Yeah.
to come out and get trash and all that kind of stuff. That particular type of thing has not really been where a lot of the challenges are. It's been people that down there when they should not be, oftentimes late at night. I gave examples of soccer tournaments and whatever, but that's more rare. What is more common is the park hours um, close at 11 p.m.
Hmm.
At that point, you're not supposed to be there.
Right.
But because uh, there's lack of personnel from Gwinnett County Parks and Rec or Gwinnett County Police,
Hmm.
the vehicular gate that
Stays open.
the park just past Simpson Elementary
Yep.
stays open because there's nobody. They don't have the staffing to have somebody close it every night and then reopen it the next day.
Yeah.
So then what happens is people either know that, about it, they go down there, and then Gwinnett PD's presence down there, for whatever reason, has not been particularly consistent. So there are gaps in which somebody's down there, and we have calls of cars down there doing donuts, drag racing.
Is it
Um,
true that it's like 300? I mean, someone said they did an Opens Record Act and they saw 300 times that the police were called down to the park. I mean, is that even?
Well, yeah, that is potentially possible
Mm.
because, or if you consider every call going in to be separate. So, for instance, let's
Uh,
say we had some motorcycles back there, doing donuts, revving, drag racing at midnight or 1 in the morning.
hmm.
You could get 5 people who live in Linfield that call 911.
Yeah.
They'll track all 5, but it's actually one incident.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I
That makes
can
more
see
sense.
that
Okay.
the number could get up there.
Sure.
But if you told me that there were 100 calls, or separate instances in which 911 was called because people were doing things, trespassing and doing things late at night or
Hmm.
whatever, 100 calls a year probably would not make me say, but the 300 plus, those are probably
Yeah.
counting every individual call.
Gotcha.
But there
The,
are, I mean, one incident down there is too many. Certainly, many,
mhm.
tens, maybe 100. That's way too many. Where we have been involved of late is we have had the marshals down there on a few times where we have seen on social media there being some talk by car clubs and others that
Mm,
they're going to meet there.
sure.
And so marshals have been there, and it's hard to know if we did in fact prevent it from materializing. They've been down there, they've had cars pull in and then
Right.
turn around and leave because they saw them. But we have involved there. And then the latest is, currently Gwinnett County Parks and Rec, through their director, Chris Miner,
Hmm.
is considering a proposal I proposed to them, and that is on the vehicular side. Chris and I had a conversation, it's many months ago, but conversation about the vehicle gate being closed. And he, again, intimated to me, I don't have the staff to do it. And then
Hmm.
Gwinnett PD doesn't. So I said, all right, this is what I'll propose. We'll put an LPR camera there. And there is a license plate reader camera right there at the vehicular gate
Okay.
going into the park. So we can, when there are incidents there, we do pull video to see if we can use it. Now, a lot of these car clubs, um, or motorcycle clubs or whatever, they know about LPR cameras. So oftentimes they'll put something over their license plate when they're getting
Hmm.
ready to do something illegal. And so the camera doesn't always get a good face, or we get a face, but we don't have any way to know their name. So a face
Right.
doesn't mean anything if we can't, run the name to run. So, but we do have a camera. We already installed it. It's working. The second thing
Hmm.
I proposed, and he went back and said, well, I've got to run this up the flagpole.
Yeah.
I said, we will buy a automated gate
Mm. Okay.
that will be down at 11 and up at, I believe it opens at 7.
Uh-huh.
And if you are stuck behind it and you come up to it, the motion will have it to where you can leave, but you wouldn't be able to get back in.
Gotcha. Okay.
If then, once we install it, they then commit to maintaining it. And it is some degree of maintenance. Anytime you have automated anything, it breaks more often than, a gate that you got to get out of your car and walk it
Right.
around the lock.
Right.
So there is some dollar amount component to it, but that's what I
Hmm.
offered, is to, buy them an automated
Would
gate.
would that be
And
similar
thank God.
to like the so you're waiting on them? Okay. Is there, I mean, is that like that's like the railroad thing? That's like the one behind the forum, I guess. That's just a bar that goes down.
That's
And
correct.
and, and by the way,
More solid material than like just a wood, painted to,
mhm.
some of the railroad ones are a little bit
Yeah,
flimsy.
right,
It's more,
right,
this is both to kind of know that you're not supposed to be there, and it should be solid enough that you wouldn't want a car to go through it because it would damage the
right,
car.
right.
Some of the railroad ones, I'm not sure if it would even damage it if you, hit them,
No,
because
no,
they're,
no. Yeah, I get that. And I mean, the only other thing I could think of is if I was a car fanatic, I'd send someone to the other side of it to like wave the sensor so then it opens and then we could drive in. I mean,
yeah. Well,
you know,
yeah, there is no way that if somebody is hell bent on getting in
yes.
the park, we can just,
I
make
mean,
it
but
to
that's the easiest thing. The thing I was thinking is along somewhat of the same lines that you were thinking, and I'm not sure what the sheriff's hours are, but there's a gate there that closes. It just needs a good lock on it,
no,
but
say there's already a gate there, but you
right,
have to have somebody physically
lock.
go out there to
Yes,
lock it,
right,
and then physically go out the next morning to unlock it. And what
yes,
Chris Miner had said is, I don't have the staff
right. No,
to
no, I
do that.
get that. Yeah,
And then FPD is like, we don't have the staff to do that.
I was just,
So they're kind of like, would love to have it closed and locked. But what I'm saying is in lieu of that,
right,
put an automated gate
yeah,
that goes down. And it could be two arms that, you can't get it to go up. You can even go so far as, if you're on the other side after the park closes,
mm-hmm,
you could end up to where it doesn't go up with motion. Um, the Fields Club actually does this at their facilities, where if you're caught behind the gate after hours,
Right.
not supposed to be there,
Yeah.
you actually have to call the non-emergency number for Gwinnett PD.
Uh-huh.
They have a key and they'll get
Uh-huh.
out there at whenever they can.
And that almost sounds better because, if the park is closing, technically, is it at dusk or is it technically at 11 p.m.?
I thought it was 11. I mean, maybe
Okay.
there's different hours
Yeah.
on
I
different.
mean,
I thought it was
okay.
11.
So, I mean, I think it's reasonable that whoever's still there should just be stuck there and call a
Yeah,
number.
I wouldn't have a problem with that again, but again, that's not our park.
Right.
So
Right.
once I would turn it over
Right.
to Parks and Rec, they could work that out.
Yeah.
But no, I don't find that unreasonable. That if the hours of the park are clearly,
Mhm.
you articulated through signage there, and you get
Right.
caught behind the gate after it closes, you got
Yeah.
to call a non-emergency number. They'll have the ability to raise it, but maybe then. And I think in the Fields Club, their arrangement is if a Gwinnett PD officer has to come out and unlock the gate, they
Yeah.
get a trespassing
Ah,
violation at the
okay.
same time. So,
I mean,
and wait there for however long it took for somebody to have the time to get there.
that, that
That
makes
was our
sense to me.
proposal because then it wouldn't be staff intensive. But
Right.
Chris's point in
Uh-huh.
what well taken, and that is you're providing me an amenity that does or will have to have maintenance dollars attached to it.
Right. Sure.
So he was like, I need to run this up the flagpole,
Right.
whatever, and I
Right.
just have to come back. But
Right.
that's our current
I
proposal.
think, yeah, I think that's a great proposal. I think you can even modify that to the degree that, like you said, what the Linfield does, I guess, is to give a ticket because how many times is someone really going to be stuck behind there anyway? At some point, is it every night? Doubtful, right? I mean, it's not going to be like that. And if it is, there's another problem. But
Exactly.
and right, and the cleanup part, I can understand that, being an issue, and that's not always. I know there is an issue like that sometimes on, especially summertime weekends where the trash bins are overflowing. There's not enough trash bins. They don't want to put more trash bins. Maybe to put plastic bags there, but people do steal the plastic bags. It's just, um, there's other parks. If we had a nonprofit set up called like Friends of Jonesbridge Park, where they raise some money, they go and they buy some more containers for the parks. Because maybe, like you said, I mean, there's always there are, there's always expenses like to maintain things. People don't understand that even Simpsonwood, which is a passive park, which is what Jonesbridge is, that budget, I'm sure, I think they said was 370,000 a year for that park. That sounds like a lot, but there's trash collection every week. There's a bunch of other things that have to be done there, mulching and all that
Well,
stuff.
yeah. Well, Jones Bridge is an active park because it has activated. It's got active programming. It's got soccer
True,
league.
true,
It's got
true. That's
you
true.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is. Yeah, I would supplement what you said by just saying, as government, anytime we're looking to add an amenity,
Hmm.
there are two types of dollars that you have to consider. That is the upfront cost of constructing the amenity, improving the amenity, whatever, take
Right,
it up. I mean, we get constantly people who tell the city, oh, you should just buy that property and turn it into a park.
right.
Well, one is as soon as you have a public, parcel, people want it to be improved.
Hmm.
Hey, can you put picnic tables there? Can you put a playground or whatever? And now you get into the second dollar amount, and that is the annual amount that you've got to budget to maintain it.
Yeah.
We have pushed back in some cases on things that we have the money to do right then, but we
Hmm.
know that it's going to be adding a annual cost that we just do not want to go down that road.
Right.
And so you have to make the decision that, look, we either need to do this, maintain this right, or
Hmm.
don't. Our town center is a good example. I mean, we've created, some of our own maintenance, challenges, maintenance,
Sure.
obligations by putting in more playground equipment, attracting more people. So we
Right.
have to, but we committed that that's our downtown and we're going to make
Right.
sure we manage it right. If you can't, then close it or do something,
Hmm.
you know, and there are even intermediate steps. If grills are actually a controversial thing to add to a park because when you
Yes, for
have the
sure.
permanent grills there, it
Hmm.
attracts people who want to spend time with larger groups of people. If you
Right.
don't have that, you would not have as many of the Fourth of July,
Yeah.
stuff. So if people unfortunately don't take care of things and take
Hmm.
care of their own trash, which they should,
Yeah.
um, and by the way, a nonprofit or a community group has been
Yeah.
discussed before. The
Okay.
problem is I've been in meetings with even Gwinnett County Parks and Rec in the room, but residents talking about what's going on. Oftentimes, when it comes up, the residents are kind of like, who's going to be part of that group?
Right.
There's a lot of people who have a lot of demands on their time. And so it's going to invariably be the people who live right there. And then their other argument is you are charging us Gwinnett County Parks and Rec
Hmm.
specific millage or property
Hmm.
tax
Hmm.
to maintain these things. You
Yep.
should, why are we having to supplement you taking
Right.
taxes from us that are specific to Parks and Rec? And
Yeah.
now we also do extra work because
The
you're
the
saying you aren't allocating the resources necessary to maintain your
the
park.
this is why there are cities like Duluth and Johns Creek, I believe, does this, that have their own parks department because this
Yeah.
way they know they can zone down to their locality, they can take care of their own parks. Gwinnett is huge. Gwinnett does a great job, the Parks Department, I think, does a really great job in maintaining a lot of the sports facilities, a lot of the parks. But it's a demanding thing, like you said. I mean, and you got to deal with just people being trashy. Yeah. 4th of July, if there's not enough trash bins, they're not going to take trash home with them. They're going to leave it there. And unfortunately, and that's a sad thing that's just
Well,
the way
yeah,
that is. But
one of three. You either got to have a representative down there during the day to be policing as it's happening.
right.
If not, you either can put extra trash bins out there,
Yeah.
or remove some of the amenities that are creating trash, which you hate to do.
Yeah.
Saying when people don't, their behavior is such, that's
Yeah.
another option. I'm not recommending, I'm just saying that. Or you allocate, you come up with the schedule that the day after 4th of July, you're
Hmm.
going to have extra crews going out there to clean it up because
Yeah.
it's like our concerts. The
Yeah.
morning after concerts on the town green, we have extra staff that goes out there and cleans it up really well because we knew that there's going to be a lot of people on the town green.
Hmm.
People just don't take care of stuff that's not theirs. It's sad,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
reality. And we just have to, you know, um, allocate resources accordingly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are some things that can be done to mitigate this. Unfortunately, and Jones Bridge Park is a great amenity, but great amenities attract people
Yeah.
from parts way outside of Peachtree Corners,
Hmm.
and and more people than the
Yeah.
residents would normally load on that park. And that's the downside of having a great unique amenity.
So at least the city's talking to the county, and you're just waiting to hear back at least about that gate
On that
part.
particular thing,
Yeah.
yes, we
Yeah.
will continue to,
Okay.
because it is in our corporate limits and
Hmm.
we are interested, and those residents there should not be dealing with what they're dealing with. So,
Sure.
well, but certainly, it would be better if we controlled it directly. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. We don't.
Yep. Yep. All right. So cool. I'm glad we got to talk about that. I know that it is a big deal. I mean, this stuff,
Yeah.
and you're right. People just don't take care of things that are not theirs sometimes. Which segues a little bit into apartments, uh, to some degree, right? It's not equity. It's transient a bit, right? People rent apartments and stuff. Apartments not a bad thing per se. It's just if it's done well. And two apartment zonings just came up, right? The Day Building and the Da Vinci Court applications. And I was reading before I knew that they were both denied. I was reading a bit of the conditions on the Day Building one, for example, that was proposed for 248 units with a minimum of like 3,000 square feet of commercial space still to be retained. And there was a bunch of really good, strong conditions on here about smart development, smart city developments, LED lights, license plate readers have to be there, security systems on the property, smart home technology within the residential units. It's all like good stuff, good
Well, Rico, I mean,
condition.
you probably won't toot your own horn, so I will. But some of those have been the result of previous conversations you and I have had on this very podcast, where we've talked about, are there
Okay.
things the city can do when
Yeah.
developers are coming in front of us wanting something
Yep.
to make it better. And my job, as an application works through the process with the help of staff, is to make a project as good as I can
Mm-hmm.
on the off chance that it's approved. Even in instances where the recommendation from staff might be to deny for
Right.
various reasons, my job is still, because I don't know, I don't vote and council
Right.
still has to vote. So I have to be prepared for either one. So, even if in instances where we'll recommend denial, we will still continue to put pressure on the applicant
Mm-hmm.
to agree to conditions to make the product the best we can. If in fact council says, yeah, Mr. City Manager,
Right.
we hear your recommendation, but we like it, we're going to approve it, then at least I know I did everything I could to make it the best. So that's no different here. I mean, it didn't get
Yeah.
approved. If it had been,
Yeah.
we made it as good of a product as we could have possibly made it.
I agree, and you guys have done a great job, and certainly through conversations. I mean, you've added things even beyond what I would like to see, but I'm glad that you're also incorporating stuff like that because it's you know being able to be a smart city and work these developments in a smart way makes sense to me, right? If we keep saying we're a smart city, then we better be making sure that what comes to fruition addresses some of that, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? And I mean, there was also, I think, you guys came up with the participation of developments like this in the crime-free multifamily housing program, which I thought was great. The individually metered areas of, apartment units. This way, at some point, could they be made into condo or equity property? Yes, by doing that. Even putting that they have to put $20,000 worth of minimum value of public art in the lobby. Instead of this just being a cookie cutter trying to let's just fit 240 apartments on some hill, which is what the big building essentially on. Um, so I'm glad that you guys are doing that. But let's get into why then, because Da Vinci Code was another one that applied for apartment development. Forget how many units, and this was basically using up empty parking space to a degree, I guess. Um, I know there's a moratorium that you all placed on the central business district. Did that run? That was for 6 months, right?
It is. We're currently in it, but these both, if somebody, an applicant had actually, or a developer had dropped an application in
Yes.
even an hour before the moratorium starts,
Right.
they got in the door. We can't, so these, they had been in the process for a
Okay.
while. I mean, as you know, these things really, once the application is officially in our process, unless
Right.
we kind of push it along a little faster for other reasons, it's generally 90 to 120 days before it is actually voted on. So it takes some time. I mean,
Okay. So can we say that? Well, I don't know if we can say this, but the city council voted denial on both of these, 7-0 denial. one of them was, I don't know if the other one was, the day building was actually recommended for approval by the planning department, I believe, because it
Both of them
fits.
were.
Both of them were. Okay. And but the city council representatives of the people decided 7-0 that these should not go move forward. Spirit of the moratorium or other reasons?
Yeah, moratorium didn't really have anything to do with these two.
Okay.
Moratorium was really just to give us a brief period of time
Hmm.
to take a closer look at a very specific part of the city, and in our case, central business district, and really even more granular than that, the office product
Hmm.
within it,
Right.
and drill down a little bit more on making sure that both we have some additional things that might protect us from having just more of a crush of these mixed use developments that have aspects of it council or the community doesn't want. At the same
Mm.
time, maybe looking at certain areas where we might actually loosen the code to allow for some creative uses of underperforming office, because we've got to be very careful. We are a second largest municipality in Georgia with no city property tax.
Right.
One of the reasons that's the case, about 30% of our general fund budget is from business license revenue.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, we've got to make sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that businesses are healthy and they're generating income in this city so that then we get business license revenue from it. And right now, the office market is really soft,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of underperforming office buildings in which the owners are coming to us saying, "Oh, I can't fill it. I'm underwater. Will you let me redevelop it into?" Well, those are coming, and we don't get to choose what applicants come here. So,
Sure. Sure.
everybody has a legal right to ultimately be heard by council with a
Right.
vote of yes or no.
Hmm.
So we're trying to tweak the comp plan section of the central business district. We're
Right.
thinking about breaking out the town center forum, kind of that, area right there that's more retail centric, and make
Hmm.
that a little bit more unique from Tech Park. Right
Okay.
now, they're together as part of our central business district. And as you
Right.
well know, our local economy is both, but Tech Park's um, you know, type of use is way different than a retail hub
Sure.
like
Sure.
the town center.
Now, and the retail hub is part of the entertainment overlay.
Yeah, there's an overlay over that
Right.
to where
Okay.
you can do things like walk out of a restaurant with a beer and walk
Right.
down the sidewalk and window
Right.
shop or go to the
Hmm.
town or whatever. But yeah, so we're trying to make that central business district, break it down even into a more granular level that might be able to allow us to, again, on one extreme, maybe
Hmm.
protect ourselves from constantly getting stuff. So this will allow us to kind of forecast to people who are looking at it what
Right.
we may or may not, or council may or may not be open to, but also, tweaking some things. I mean, you and I talked prior to the podcast about an existing office building that was very close to putting in pickleball
Hmm.
inside of what was, or actually still is, a commercial office building
Okay.
broken up into offices for white collar administrative occupants, and they were going to gut the whole thing. And the reason is because right now there's not a lot of people looking for office space,
Right.
and the owner's like, I'm trying to get creative here. So we've got to be creative, or make sure that our code for the right things
Hmm.
in the right instances might allow for a little bit more creative things than our zoning code foresaw when it was written many, many decades ago.
Right.
And so that's why the moratorium exists. It did not have anything to do with council's consideration of these two applications.
Do the from what you heard from the council, is the opportunity for these to come back in different forms? like, obviously 248 units, studio, 1, 2 bedroom, multifamily. I think we were talking about stacked flats in the day building rezoning. Um, no one's saying that, this is a MUD, multi-use development, a mixed-use development, right?
Yeah.
Mixed use. Problem with that is that these types of things, and I can see why the moratorium was put in place, because all these applications that are coming is like, we want to put these 250 plus apartments, and we'll keep 3,000 square feet or 2,500 feet or 1,200 feet as restaurant or breakfast place or, something. So they're trying to say the mixed use when in reality it's an apartment development, and there's no mixed use really to it. Can this
And
come back?
that, we have had a few of those symbolic things, but we amended our ordinance, I don't know, a year ago, and
Mm-hmm.
now uh, the you can't have a use that exceeds, can't remember exactly, like maybe 60, one use exceed more than 60% of the 100%, so you can't have
Mm,
98% residential,
got it.
1% commercial, 1% retail. You can't play that game and then call it mixed
Mm.
use.
Well,
Um,
or is it a mixed formula of apartments and equity, like the stack flats? That would be considered equity, I
no,
guess.
that's still
Oh,
residential.
that's still
Because
residential.
remember, equity versus rental cannot be a consideration in and of itself of
Mm-hmm.
whether something is approved or not. A parcel under the zoning procedures law, a parcel has to be considered whether it a residential use
Mm-hmm.
good for that parcel or not. You can't end up saying, well, only if it's equity or only if it's
Mm,
age restricted or only if
okay.
it's, those things bubble up. Developers oftentimes will offer to do that in
Right.
return for improving their odds, but that it cannot be a consideration of something, because you have to understand, these denials, when staff does a report, we have to
Mm-hmm.
objectively look at whether or not the application is in, conflict with any local code, law,
Right.
character area, that kind of thing.
Right.
If it meets all those criteria, we're not really, these recommendations are not like I wake up one morning and I'm like, yeah, I think we'll go there. It's recommend approval because it meets all of the legal and
Sure. Sure.
now
Yeah.
that's merely to say that council, each individual has to vote their own conscience, and they
Mm-hmm.
all have other considerations. So that it's not, but I bring that up to say, you just asked the question of could they come back. Anything can come back,
Right.
but it can come back in various ways. An applicant can wait for the cooling off period and
Mm-hmm.
present the same exact thing.
Right.
Um, and timing sometimes matters.
Uh-huh.
Comments have come up about these two mixed use development applications are very close to the town center, a town center in which there are two previously approved
Yeah.
residential units that are not completed yet. One is
Mm-hmm.
under construction, Solus,
Right.
right there on the town center side, and then North American hasn't started theirs yet. So there's been talk about timing, but that's
Mm-hmm.
one way to come back. Another way is they could re-engage with the city and say, hey, maybe if we tweak the site plan to have this or whatever.
Right.
Wig, the parcel that's basically at the corner of Engineering and 141, right
Mm-hmm.
across on the west side of 141 from Racetrack and Corners Liquor, they submitted a mixed-use development that had 275 apartment units,
Right.
along with some other, two other uses, and that was denied. And then they came back and just made it a townhome and just had 75 townhomes.
Right.
And that
Selling
was approved.
that'll probably sell for 750,000 or more each.
But I mean, that
Yes.
was approved. So that was
Yeah.
a way for them to come back, but it was a different product.
Sure.
Other
Sure.
way is, also have to understand In the case of the owner of the Da Vinci Court property,
Hmm.
um, they have um, they have filed a suit against us.
Ah, sure.
So
Why not?
we will be in front of a judge at some point, and if a judge finds that the denial was not based on legally defensible reasons,
Hmm.
the judge will kick it back and force mayor and council to consider that site again.
Okay. So that
And
happened once before. Well, that happens all the time, actually. But even before the city was approved, became a city, that happened with Town Center is, with the
Charlie
Roberts
Roberts.
properties. Charlie Roberts sued because he felt that it was not a good zoning, and in some ways he probably was correct about where it was. So he got courts threw it back.
Ruling, yes, it
Yeah.
forced
So
the county
yeah, I
to
remember that.
consider, and they did approve.
Yep. Yep.
And then he came back to the city with a product,
Hmm.
and it was going to be, well, yeah, it was denied, filed suit, but then there was conversation amongst us, and he withdrew that in return for coming back with what was ultimately the product that
Right.
he sold it for. So
Yeah.
it does happen, and
Yeah.
in instances, a judge could say, "Nope, mayor and council, you did not. That was in violation of that property owner's
Mm.
right to their highest and best use.
Yeah.
You did
Yeah.
not meet zoning procedure law. Try again."
I mean,
And
I can see that. I think if I don't recall the exact details of the comprehensive plan, but I think doesn't that property, if you look at the comprehensive plan 2040, I guess, and you look at where that property backs up to or borders, is it other offices or is it the area of land that in the plan says could be multi-use family? You know, I mean, he
yes,
could come
well,
back and say,
it is a good point. Our
yeah,
comp plan, both of these mixed use
yeah,
applications were in the character area in which our comp plan said would be appropriate to have dense residential.
yeah,
The density of residential is fitting
right,
in a town center, downtown area. So, from that
yeah.
aspect, our comp plan does say that it was an appropriate use there.
Hmm.
Doesn't go any farther than to say dense residential. Again, because you can't solely based on what type of residential, don't get into rental equity, age
Hmm.
restricted,
Hmm.
or whatever. Um,
It
so
just
it
says
doesn't go
multifamily.
into that. It doesn't say, oh, it's appropriate for equity dense residential.
Yeah.
That can't be in and of itself a consideration. But dense residential is a industry accepted, um, you know,
Yeah.
appropriate use in downtown areas.
Yeah.
That one we didn't make up. We're not unique in that regard. Now, again, community may say we don't care and put
Hmm.
pressure on the elected officials. And, we certainly are at a point, I will say that we have a lot of, I mean, we have a significant enough of a resident base that moved here. They oftentimes, when they're not happy or with a decision council made, or they're wanting to get their comments and in front of council before
Hmm.
council weighs on something, they oftentimes all start with I moved here in 1992,
Right. Right.
and the city has grown and traffic has gotten worse or whatever, and I do not disagree. I have no doubt that those comments are true. However,
Yeah.
we as a city, as many people don't realize, have a limitation to our ability to say no
Hmm.
on a property owner who has a legal right to a highest and best use of their property. And when we are located in a growing metro area, there is a constant demand
Yeah.
for residential. And then a property owner is like, I can get a higher and better use of my property with
Mm.
putting residential on it than I currently can get. It starts to get into a difficult area, and
Mm.
those who think that we can hit the pause button on growth, that is impossible. The city does not have the power to just indiscriminately say, nope, we're done growing. We're not
Yeah.
going to allow more people.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets, again, it's challenging. The most difficult decision I have to
Hmm.
present to council for consideration are land use decisions.
Yeah.
It is
No,
hard.
yeah.
But again, also just because property owners want to get more money, there are certain things that if they don't meet, you're kind of like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
mean, it
think, you know,
could be Rico. You're like, look, I could get more money selling my house, demoing it, and constructing. I don't know,
a duplex.
well, something like that. And then we
Yeah.
say no, it's not appropriate
Right.
because you are in a neighborhood that are single family detached residential.
Hmm.
So no, it's not appropriate. Those are easy. There's always extreme. It's where you get into where you don't have something that clear, or it's right next to one that already is what they
Right.
want. And
Yeah, I can understand. It's a difficult
it
thing. You
is.
guys are
Yeah. One, I don't vote, and
right.
two, I'm not trying to say that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer.
No, I know.
I'm only just trying to make sure that people understand that the city is not lord over land use in such a
Hmm.
way that mayor and council can literally just say no or yes indiscriminately. It has to be
Yes.
based on
And this
people,
is all
principles,
right.
and
But this is also why the comprehensive plan is there.
Mhm.
And people should understand that next time it gets updated, what, in 4 years? I think it was just recently updated, right?
Yeah, it's about 4 years from now or so, maybe
Right.
three and a half. It'll
Right.
be updated again. It gets updated every 5 years.
Right. So people should be aware of that because that is what guides a lot of this, right?
Absolutely.
Because they can point to that eventually and say, well, you denied me, but your plan shows I should be able to do this type of development. It doesn't say specific, like you said, apartments or equity, but it does talk about density and stuff like that. Um, and what you expect that the city, how this will all pan out, because in a controlled way, that's what the plan is. The plan is to provide a controlled way of expansion of a city's population that will naturally grow, and that's what developers look at. And if the developer comes back and says, well, this shows I should be able to do that. I bought the land for that reason, or I own this and I can't do the office building. I mean, I just saw Dell, I think, was trying to get all their employees back for full time in the office 5 days a week. And half their employees said, we're not coming back. We could do hybrid, 2 days a week, at home, 3 days in, but we're not coming back. So, what do? Do you fire half your workforce because they're refusing to come back? I mean, it's such a changed world in a
It
way.
is, and then even on things that the use itself isn't necessarily controversial, it's just the call it growth.
Hmm.
We do have some anti-growth people who it doesn't matter what it is, they
Right,
don't want to change. You got to
right.
be careful because when markets change, properties go through
Hmm.
phases. Would we rather have an empty office building that's in decay, potentially dragging down neighborhood
Right.
lot, or do we want to work with the property owner to try to find something that's, we got criticism on the property I mentioned earlier where they came in with 275 apartments denied and
Right.
they came up with 75 townhomes.
Hmm.
So now those who only care about equity versus rental, they were kind of like, all right, they're equity. We
Hmm.
still had a contingent of residents who were like, I don't know why you're letting them do this. It's going
Yeah.
to increase traffic. Well, that's potentially true if you consider that the office that was there and the big surface parking lot, it was completely vacant. And the office
Yeah.
building no longer actually habitable because it had water damage. But there were people who would have rather that thing sit there like that because they didn't
Yeah.
want any more cars, or they didn't want to meet. And you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, but that property is also not generating revenue for the city. And then it's dragging property values down because
Right.
appraisals are based on comparables.
Right.
And it has a ripple effect that we as a city cannot ignore. And that's what makes these decisions really complicated. And
Hmm.
it is not and can never be as cut and dry as somebody who's like, we should just seal off the city to growth, or we could never have any more apartments, or we
Yeah.
could never allow
Right.
for that.
You know
Can't do
that.
that legally, and
Yeah.
we shouldn't be doing that functionally
Hmm.
because our local economy is very nuanced and complicated and
Yeah.
important. If we don't want to have levy a millage rate on residents of the city. Right now, the business community is holding up,
Hmm.
that revenue stream, and the city's not taking money
And
from you and I, Rico, merely based on the value of our residential property we own.
right.
But
Yes.
most
Only
do,
the county does that.
right? But most cities do.
Yes. So we've, it's good to have opposition
Mhm.
because it provides creativity. It provides a way to make a project better. But I certainly disagree with those that feel that things should exactly stay the same. Like the forum at one point. Well, why was that being changed and stuff? Because they would prefer having the 17 empty stores that there was there at one point.
And
You
growing.
know, yes. So, and people, obviously, people, well, the rent's going up and they're not letting people, you don't know other people's businesses and what's necessary to actually make that business work or what their cash flow is, because maybe it's not as good as you think, because the market is not quite there. Or maybe they're trying to make it a little different and stuff. So, yeah, opposition is fine because that does help make projects better. But because we could go down this road forever, I mean, there's things I'd like to see. There's things that where I'd like to see development come in and say, you know what, 30% of our apartments are going to be made and only rented to median income people, really affordable versus, let's say, our normal apartment rent is 2,500 for a two bedroom. We'll make these 1,400 for a two bedroom, but you have to meet that median income that allowable and make it affordable. I mean, there's all
We're
sorts of
working on that,
nuances.
Rico. Working
I'm
on that
sorry.
very thing. Oh,
Are you
absolutely.
working on that? I'd like to see
Absolutely.
affordable housing here.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
we are.
it's good, good.
We're seeing if we can't get, call it, starter home,
That too. That too.
call it, workforce housing, whatever. But
Yeah.
yes,
I
we are
mean,
looking at maybe having a restriction on the title that the owner can't sell it for a period of time into the future, except
mhm.
to somebody who's making a percentage of the area median income
Okay. I mean,
to
all
keep
those things.
it from getting out of
Other
control.
states are doing it. Other counties are doing that. I mean, I have friends whose kids can't. They're just saying, I can't buy anything here in Peachtree Corners because there's nothing, and I'm not making enough to do that purchase. Maybe they're doing well. They're doing household income of 80,000 between two, a husband and wife, or 100,000, which sounds like a lot, but that's not a lot when you're dealing with buying a home, and you have to put down a certain amount of money on it. So yeah, I mean, we could keep talking about that. Maybe we
Well,
should do a show on that, actually.
well, we should definitely. I'll tell you, you bring up a good point. Here's something that many people don't realize because it's only a phenomenon that's happened over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
But for a long time, and for legitimate reasons, people were very protective of, oftentimes, we'll just use Simpson Elementary School as an example. A
Yes.
very high performing elementary school that people wanted to get their kids into, and its performance made the area that fed into
Yes.
that
For
more
sure.
valuable.
For
When I
sure.
bought my home in the Simpson Elementary School District
Hmm.
8 years ago, I could have taken my exact home, picked it up, and dropped it into, Berkeley Lake Elementary or something else, and I would have lost $50,000 in value. Same exact home, different
Yeah.
school feeder. So people were always protective of, oh, we don't want to overcrowd the schools. We want it to be whatever. Do you know that Pinckneyville Middle School and both Peachtree Elementary and Simpson Elementary have
Hmm.
had declining student populations over the
Yes.
last 3 years and
Yep.
are under enrolled?
Yep.
And the reason for that is because take Simpson Elementary. Most, in fact, as it stands right this second,
Hmm.
all of the residential units are zoned to be an ownership and equity product. There's no
Yes.
apartments feeding it.
Right.
The house values are so high that people who have elementary school age kids haven't in their career made enough money to be able to afford a $500,000 home
Hmm.
in Simpson, so they can't afford. And of course, interest rates hurt. And then you also don't have turnover from the people who are currently in them.
Oh yeah. Who wants to
People
sell at this point?
6,000 square foot homes that are now empty nesters, but they're
Hmm.
like, we could get a good dollar amount for our home, but then wherever we go, we're going to have to pay through the nose as well.
Yeah.
Or the big one is, I have a 3% interest rate, or I don't own it. I don't know, I
Right.
don't have a mortgage at all. And now if I want to buy it, I got to pay 7% interest. I'm just going to stay in my home. So
Yeah.
you don't have homes becoming available, and then you don't have, younger families able to
Yeah.
afford it. So
Yeah.
because of it, we don't have the feeder for those. So Simpson Elementary is in danger of losing some of their paraprofessionals, that are not
Mm.
teaching class, but they're kind of supporting.
Right.
Same Pinckneyville Middle School, because their student population is down and they're actually, under enrolled.
Yeah.
And don't,
Yeah.
we get comments as recent as the last couple of weeks. Oh, even on like the last two rezonings.
Hmm.
Oh, it's going to overcrowd the schools.
No, that it's not.
Like the
That it's
exact
not.
opposite.
Yeah.
The schools are down but just
Yeah.
people.
And people don't understand it's the head count that funds the schools. They don't have enough students. They're not going to get that budget
Their
from
teacher,
from the
exactly,
county.
the
Yes.
teacher is going to go down.
Yeah. So.
Um, but also, right before our podcast, I just met with a number of residents who provided some really good recommendations on how we can improve the information about land use decisions the city is making, about
Hmm.
applications coming in,
Yeah.
making it easier to find the information, making it easier to understand the process, things we're going to
Right.
be adding to the website to make it better, based on some of the recent public hearings and how
Hmm.
people found out about it. So we're always looking to improve as well and make sure that all of our residents, the more they know about the complications of this and understand what council is faced with, the more they'll appreciate the challenging decision
Yeah.
council made. But they did the best that they can, and the council did not make these decisions based on rolling up to the final meeting barely knowing what's going on, and at the end of the
Right.
day kind of being like, where's the win? Although that way they spend time and we
Yeah,
spend
they
time
do.
them educated
Yeah.
on this, and they do a great job of making decisions on really complicated land use.
I think part of, I mean, this is good what we do. I think a lot of people listen to the podcast in a variety of ways, whether it's audio or video on YouTube or Facebook and stuff. Um, but I think we're going to try to make better effort also in reporting some of the things coming up, because we don't always do that. We're doing post coverage sometimes. We're a feature magazine, so it's a little different, right? But I think we're going to start doing a little bit more of that coverage so that people can be aware of the things coming up also.
I'll offer you one other thing, Rico. I don't know how resource intensive it is or if it's advantageous for you, but if as you know how to look, when we get applications in,
Hmm.
and at a certain point, staff report's done, and we make it available to the public so they can see the application, they can see the staff assessment as it's
Yeah.
getting ready to go to planning commission. If you want to take individual, land use cases
Hmm.
and do special podcasts to discuss those particular
Could
cases,
do that. Sure. Great
I
idea.
make myself available. My community development director would be happy to do it. We could do it together.
Okay.
If you find value in doing that, and then you could
Yeah.
push it out and say, hey, this is specific about, this mixed use
Yeah.
development rezoning application that
Yeah.
council is going to hear, and we can talk through.
You know what? That's great. And on something like that, maybe we can even do it as a live thing and take questions
Yeah,
from people.
be happy.
Whether Okay, that'd be cool. We'll work on that. So we'll work on how we can, what that would
Yeah,
look like, and I'll get back to you. Appreciate you offering that.
yeah.
Cool. Everyone, thank you. This was going to be a 30-minute podcast. It ends up being 1 hour. Sorry about keeping you like that, Brian.
Well, to say you and I, we always have the best intentions up front, but these are complicated but important things to discuss, and yeah.
For
So
sure, for sure. No, so thank you for more time than I asked for. Everyone, share this podcast. Rate us if you're on Apple or iHeart and you're listening to this. Give us a rating on this podcast. Certainly share it to your friends, your HOA, your whoever you need to share this out to. Some good discussion here, and I think more to come for sure as we do every month. But thank you again, and thank you to EV Remodeling Inc. for being a sponsor, a corporate sponsor of our podcast, and a good supporter of our journalism. We appreciate that, Eli. So check them out at evremodelinginc.com and find out how they can help you remodel your home. Thanks again, Brian. Hang in there.